Right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. With me today is my friend, my colleague, my chief of staff, Joe Beecroft. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, Charlie.
So, we have got an important announcement that we're going to reveal at some point within today's episode. In fact, to talk about a cliffhanger, this is probably one of the biggest announcements that we have made in the 14 years since Predictable Profits has been around. To add more to the cliffhanger, I'll tell you that it's probably one of the scariest things that I've had to do in a long time, but you'll understand why I'm doing what we're doing and what the impact is going to be of this decision, and why, if you're not doing it yourself, you may want to consider it. So today's topic is about niching or niching, however you want to say it, tomato, whatever.
I don't know how it's said. I actually don't know the pronounce. Actually, and I'd be probably the wrong person to ask. But yeah, that's a good point.
No worries. So I wrote about this in the Predictable Profits Playbook. We talked about how the riches are in the niches. You compare the two different companies, two different industries. You see one that is far more generic. You see another one that is much more niche down. And this isn't really much of a pop quiz. It's more of a trick question. Which one do you think gets paid more on average? The niche business. So why do we think that is? Actually, Joe, I'm going to redirect that conversation to you. Why do you think why do you think on par, niche businesses in general get paid more money than generalists?
At a high level, Charlie, I just think it makes things easier across every department of your business, from product, sales, marketing. When you know exactly who you're talking to and who you are serving, that becomes a lot easier task. And if that becomes an easier task, then in theory, growing your business becomes easier, which I think is the use case in most cases.
Yeah. I mean, let's think about it, right? Homeowners, right? If you're listening, chances are you have a home or you have owned a home or you lived in a home, right? So you understand that if you want to get something done, let's say you want to get a kitchen done. You put the proposal out to everybody. You get one guy that says, hey, I'm more than happy to help you with the kitchen. In fact, we do kitchen, we do plumbing, we'll do bathroom remodels, we'll build yourself a deck. Heck, we'll do a patio. We can help you with your landscaping, your retaining walls, and all this other stuff. And then you have somebody else that comes in and says, we specialize in creating luxury high-end kitchens. Which one do you think naturally is going to produce the better kitchen for you?
The one that spoke to me immediately and directly.
Yeah. And you get a feeling that they understand your problems more specifically. They've been down this road over and over and over again. And so you're going to get a more streamlined experience. And for that reason, that's one of the main reasons, well, they get paid more. One of the things that I often look at is, Amazon is a beast. They have thousands and thousands of products. And a question that I was asked many times throughout my years is, if you were to compete with Amazon, how would you actually compete with Amazon? So I would just pick one particular product, one particular niche within Amazon and be the best within that particular product category and niche. And you'll notice those that compete with Amazon, they'll pick one particular thing, one particular slice of the market, and they just go real deep and become thought experts. Marketing becomes more streamlined, more efficient. You pay less per lead and so forth because you're far more streamlined. You can build thought leadership within that particular industry, within that particular market. So when people think about that category, it's like, boom, you become top of mind. It's very difficult for Amazon to be top of mind for every single widget category that's out there. But if you own one particular category and you reinforce that over and over and over again, you then can remain that top of mind. So let's actually back up for a second. Let's talk for a minute about what it actually means to niche down. So, Joe, people think niching down. What's the first thing for you that comes top of mind?
First thing for me is to have a specific audience, somebody very clearly defined on who it is you serve. People can say something like what we have done in the past and said 7- and 8-figure business owners, or they can say 7- and 8-figure coaching agencies. One's a lot more specific audience. So I'd say a specific audience is the first thing I think of. Because of the specific audience, You therefore are probably coming down to, as you mentioned earlier, a specific problem, right? And if you can be more specific with the problem, then you're probably most likely going to be more specific with the solution. And those things, when done right, equal higher retention rates, contracts at a higher price, easier conversion rates when it comes to sales, easier acquisition of MQLs, SQLs, because everything is geared towards one person turning around and saying, holy cow, that's me. And so for me, Charlie, the three areas are from service, problem, and solution.
So I want our listeners to visualize something for a minute. I want you to visualize three circles. Let's say you have, one on the left, one on the right that is overlapping, and then one on the bottom that's overlapping the two, right? So you got three circles, right? And those three circles, the center represents the ultimate niche. So one circle, you have that as your specific market. So let's say, for example, you niche down, you say you're going to target lawyers, right? Boom. Lawyers is going to be one particular market. Then the other one is going to be, what is the problem that you're solving? The way that we look at it at Predictable Profits is, that problem, you want to focus it on the three core areas that you're solving. In our case, it's people who want to grow their business faster, more predictably, and less dependent on themselves, right? Boom. That's the problem. And then in the third circle, it is how you uniquely solve it, right? What is that going to be? What is your process? That unique process that's unique to you. And so the combination of all three, the power of the combination of all three is like freaking massive when you have an audience that is super dialed down, when you have a problem that is very specific, and you have a process that goes ahead and solves in a very unique way, because you can own the process. Nobody else is going to be able to own that process. The three problems that you're solving is very, very, very dialed in. So you can be an expert at those three core problems that you're solving, the three core questions they're asking, and then the market. So many of you have heard the story. If you've been following me for a while, one of my banner clients, I love talking about it because it's done so well, is this client that came to me that they were doing 950,000 when we started working with them, and now they're well over 50 million. And we were able to do that, and now we're talking 7 years, right? Rapid growth. And so when you think about that, one of the questions that my team continues to bring back to us, or bring back to me, is they say, if you were to step out of your seat as CEO of Predictable Profits and give yourself advice, what advice would you give you? And let's take a look at the clients that have had the most success across the board. How did you start? What is the big changes that you made? And right off the bat, we'll take a look at, what is that niche? What is that niche, and how can you tighten that up? This is where I reveal the cliffhanger that I started early in this presentation, begin to tell you what we're doing and why we're doing it. We actually came to this revelation while we were sitting in California. And the team posed this question. I said, well, here's the thing. What I would give the advice and whatnot, and I don't like to give myself this answer because it's scary, is it would be a niche. Now, I'm going to be open and honest with you because, we're in the trenches with you. I go through some of the same emotions, the same feelings, the same reservations as all of you. This was probably the hardest sell that my team has ever had to make for me. I know the power of niching. I wrote about it in the Predictable Profits Playbook. I've talked about it multiple different times on stages and in the media. I don't have to be convinced the power of niche, but all of a sudden it's like time to eat my own pudding. I'm kicking and screaming like a little baby waiting for some candy, right?
What do you think that was, Charlie?
It's the same story that we hear from all our clients. I go, I want a niche, but then again, like, we have clients that are coming to us in this industry. We have clients that are coming to us in this industry. We have clients that we're working with here and there. I mean, we just got off a boardroom call with a client that is outside of the niche that I'm about to tell you. And the amount of money that she made all year when she first started working with us, she makes in about 3 weeks now. Think about that. So it's like, no, I want more of that too, right? So what she made all year before working with us, she makes now in 3 weeks. She's grown her company by hundreds, if not thousands of percent. It's like, no, I want that. And I feel like In my mind, even though I know better, I'm excluding a big part of the market. That's what I feel. That's what I fear.
Do you think there's something to also, one of our other founding principles is that, founder based sales and founder based success, CEO based success, right? You've grown this business over hard work and referrals and nothing but grit and grind. And during those years, you're generally way more open to explore multiple opportunities to keep the lights on at your business or to grow to that next level, or to be able to afford that next employee. And then when it comes down to actually we're at a point where we should focus, I could see it also being daunting for CEOs because they're also having to let go, not only, as you said, of the mentality of I'm missing out on a lot of the market, but hey, I've done this to this point and worked really, really hard and we haven't niched.
Yeah, you're spot on. And also, when you think about it, it's like there's this argument of, well, it worked and it worked for a while. But then in 2024, something interesting happened. We had a more discerning client base than we ever have had. And so, in many ways, we grew, but we've never worked so hard for every dollar that we've earned. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
We've never worked so hard for every dollar that we've earned. And so, it shouldn't be hard to collect leads. It shouldn't be hard to convert. And if it's hard, you have to look back and reflect and say, why is it so hard? And part of what we know through the 14 years of experience, or maybe it's 15 now, in the 15 years, one of the things that we've experienced working with hundreds and hundreds of people is that it gets easier when you have the right message market match. And so that's when, we had to really just listen to our own advice and take our own pudding. Our biggest competitive advantage is when we take our own advice.
Of course, but I think it's important to point out, Charlie, like niching down, it's not starting from scratch. It's really not. It's actually doubling down on your super consumer, right? And it wasn't just a case of the team wanting to do this so marketing's easier, sales is easier. No, it was a case of looking at where our product had come to this day in the 15 years, looking at the majority of who our customer base was, and for us, our most successful customers, and who our super consumers were, and then also looking and realizing, wow, what we teach has the most impact on that industry, right? So it was more of we weren't convincing you, we were leading a horse to water. And you already knew it. It was in our data. It was in our database. When you look at the majority of clients who don't attrition and they're the happiest and that they're implementing and getting results, it was a real no-brainer internally before we, brought it all to the table or brought it up as a team and began to break it down as a team. And I would say that's the same for everybody else. If you're looking at what does niching down look like for me, I never want to undertake that. It is not pivoting and changing and doing anything different. It's finding out where your most success lies, where your super consumer lies, and then doubling down in that area.
You're absolutely right. When we talk to our clients, we're going to use one example, the CEO of a PR agency. When we started working with the CEO of this PR agency, he was the PR agency for everyone, right? He would help everybody. And there were some really famous people on his roster that he helps. And so just like we talked about, we said, hey, man, we got to niche things down a little bit, right? So let's take a look at the clients that you have right now. Which clients do you get the most leads from that are the easiest to convert, that stick around the longest, that have the highest lifetime customer value, that are the easiest for you to deliver the goods and so forth? What do we notice as a common theme? And so for this particular person, he said, well, they're in public policy, and public policy and finance. Okay, great. Public policy and finance. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of going this wide, really going to niche things down. And can we see an overlap on how public policy and finance, the way that works? Do we have a unified message? Is that going to be enough of a niche? And sometimes we have to go even tighter. But for this particular individual, it was pretty evenly split between public policy and finance. And they do cover, from a PR perspective, there's a lot of similar challenges that both of them face. So then he was able to hone in on the problem that he was solving and so forth. As we did that, something amazing happened. His growth kicked into hyperspeed. On average, he's growing 40% per year. We've been working together since 2019, and he's been growing 40% per year over and over and over and over again. And the fascinating thing was, Joe and I were just on a call with him earlier this week, I believe. We were just on a call with him earlier this week. And in PR in the year 2024, one of the common things that we hear is that, oh, PR is nice to have. It's not really a must have. And so attrition rates for many PR agencies went through the roof. When you integrate the predictable profits operating system correctly, when you have the right niche, when you understand the problems, you understand how to solve them, and so forth, you have the right retention strategies, you keep them around. And so I had him reveal this to Joe because it's so impressive that I wanted Joe to hear it himself. And do you remember what he told you that his attrition rate was? Do you remember the number?
I can't. 3%. Wow. Yeah,
3%.
you're growing.
3%. That was his attrition rate, 3%. What's remarkable is when most people hear attrition rate of 3%, what they're hearing is, oh, 3%, which means 3% per month, which is how you normally track attrition. So 36% attrition over the course of the year. And by the way, if you're 5% or under for an attrition rate, you're doing fantastic. This was 3% over the entire year in total. If he took all his clients in total, he only lost 3% in total out of all of his clients. He's got the highest retention rate out of anybody I have ever seen. And it's remarkable, but part of that has to do with the fact that he knew exactly the problems that they were dealing with. He knew exactly how to pivot. He was able to pivot quick. He was able to be agile. He was able to meet them where they were, given the current market conditions. And he wasn't a nice to have, he was an absolute must have.
I'll give you another real world example as well, Charlie. I mean, the last company I helped be a part of from the beginning and grow for 4 years we're one of the first companies, and there's still not a big industry, we build camper concession stands, little teardrop looking campers as concession stands. And when we started that company, we serviced everybody who wanted to. Ice cream cones, milkshakes, avocado toast. But one of the inquiries that would come over a lot that we saw in our early form submission data, we weren't even doing like proper metric tracking. We just looked at the form data one day and was like, hey, do you realize that most of these people are coming in wanting to do mobile coffee shops? And I was running the marketing at the time. And again, the power of niching down, I went on and looked at the search term mobile coffee shop, and nobody is dominating or owning the market. I think it was like a 0.001 click cost or something, 1 cent cost. And so we were spending around $5,000 in marketing at the time, spread across a Google search campaign for various different things, tacos, you name it. And I took the entire budget without asking the CEO, and I dumped it all into that idea of mobile coffee shops. And Charlie, we spent the first couple of years probably trying to break the $1 million barrier. And in our third year, we went to 3.5 million from under a million. And that was all down to that one key search term. But from that, that's all we did post that point. And not only then did we have to help them get taco codes in Pennsylvania. No. We were just the coffee expert codes across the United States. We became the experts at it. If you came to us not knowing how to start a coffee camper business, but you wanted to, we could tell you everything you needed to know. And again, that company has continued to grow and continue to double down on that niche. Not only does it double down on that niche, it's increased its product availability on a vertical to be able to double down even further. So not only do they do the concession carts now, but they have consultation on how to set up this if you don't know how to do it. And they also have bar carts for the people that can't afford the big camper but want to set up a coffee cart. So that one decision in the second year not only exploded the growth, it made us dominate a marketing space so that if you typed that in on Google, we were the only people that came up. And then our product just exploded because it became that much more specific and expert in nature. So another world example, and it was just exactly the last company before I joined you. Again, the power of niching down.
That's a great example. And one thing that I want to point out too, so I had another really important thought partner of mine, brilliant individual. His name is Taki Moore, great guy. So he and I were talking about niching and all that other fun stuff. And he used this metaphor that I thought was great. I figured I'd share it with you guys. And, he said, it's much like a target, if you want to look at it. The niche itself that you decide is in the center of the target. And so if they meet the niche requirements, the industry and whatnot, boom, they go right in the center of the target. But it doesn't mean that if somebody comes to you and they're outside of the niche, that you're not going to work with them. You just have to be more discerning to say, can I actually help and support this individual? So, for example, we work with many, many, many people that are way outside of the, let's say, the agency industry and whatnot, like a whole bunch of diverse groups. But if somebody came to us and they were in the retail business, they own a retail store, they go, hey, I'm in retail and my biggest problem is on inventory management. Can I hire you guys? We're not going to accept them as clients, even though we know enough to be dangerous. One of the newsletters that I just wrote on LinkedIn, we talked about one of the big reasons why many companies stay small is they stay small simply because they try to customize everything. And if somebody's coming to you for advice that's outside of your particular process and you're trying to customize everything, it just makes it very difficult to grow and become much, much larger. So, if they can fit within your model, if they can fit within your process and you can support them, then you can accept them if they're outside of your industry. But your marketing, your messaging, all of that needs to aim for getting everybody in that center of the target. So let's talk a little bit, though, about now what we did over here at Predictable Profits. I feel like there should be some sort of drum roll, right? The decisions that we've made. So let's start with the first of the circles, which was the market. Well, since we started back in 2010, there's one particular industry that has continued to come to us over and over and over again. The companies that we've grown the fastest, the one I just mentioned, from 950,000 to well over $50 million, and several others that we've put on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list, they fall within one particular industry. Joe, you want to do the honor and reveal which one that is?
Snip. Marketing agencies.
Yeah, they're agencies. So the marketing agencies are one, they're AI agencies.
Consultation agencies.
Yep. Computer development agencies, mobile app development agencies, website agencies. They just happen to be agencies. They're B2B agencies working with B2B clients. And we consistently get our best results over and over again. So we decided, as of 2025, officially, Predictable Profits will be niching not just with agencies. We're maintaining our position of 7 and 8 figure companies because let's face it, as it was, there's not very many coaches that specialize in working with 7 and 8 figure companies. It just requires a total different level of experience. But we are niching into agencies who are those 7 and 8 figure agencies that are looking to the second part of the circle, looking to grow faster, more predictably, and less dependent on themselves. And you have been with me for a while, you know that the third circle, which would be our unique process, is the Predictable Profits Operating System. The Predictable Profits Operating System wasn't necessarily developed out of inspiration. I guess you could say part of it was inspiration. The big part of it was actually necessity. Because you got Bain and BCG and McKinsey, all of those companies have built frameworks for companies that are growing 9, 10 figures. But to the best of our knowledge, there has never been a framework for creating predictable profit and just sustainable growth for 7 and 8 figure companies. So we had to build a framework for that. We had to build a framework in order to specialize in working with them. And that's where the Predictable Profits Operating System came into play. So that, my friends, is the big reveal. Predictable Profits will be niching to agencies, 7 and 8 figure agencies. Now let's look at this for a minute. Let's look at the impact and what this means. Now it means our marketing is going to be far more refined. Our messaging is going to be far more dialed in. Our cost per leads will be lower. Our conversion rate will go higher. But it'd be a lot easier to train the team and the sales team and whatnot because it'll be a much more of a common message. Will it mean that we'll be turning off some people that come knocking, or that were originally coming and knocking on the door, that maybe read the Predictable Profits playbook or see me on stage or whatnot, gets to the website and then starts thinking, oh, this might not be for me. Sure. But the upside in the conversion will be much greater than that. Does it mean that we won't accept somebody that we can help that's outside of the industry? No, it does not mean that. Because we talked about it's the center of the target. But if we can help through our models, of course, it still means that. But the marketing has to be fully dialed in. And that's ultimately the big focus. So I'm excited. I'm excited and I'm nervous. I'm excited and I'm nervous. But the interesting thing is, just since we started focusing more on agencies, we're already seeing a massive uptick in conversations that we've been having. And we haven't even updated the website just yet. It's really just been the content that we've put out there. And we've already seen the impact of this conversation. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
No, if anybody's thinking about it, I think starting a business, there's power in niching, and then there's starting a business, there's power in not niching. If anybody's thinking about it, and again, believing it to be something that's impossible, that won't result in growth, I would just encourage you to, one, go look at your own metrics and see what they tell you. And then if not, just look at the industry and the world in general. Not the industry, but business in general in the world. Like, at a certain point, companies explode when they do those three things. And I don't think it's impossible. And if you've got a CEO that you want to bring to water, hit me up.
It's true. It's if the team wants to niche, it's going to be one of the hardest sells for the CEO, as I went through it, even with the context of knowing. Now, does this mean predictable profits will always remain a niche for agencies? Well, you get to a point of market penetration where then at some point you'll hit that point, you realize that you can expand beyond it. But predictable profits can be a $100 million business focusing in on agencies. It's just whether or not, we want to go beyond, that. It may require us to then expand it into a deeper niche. But, that's where we sit. Those are the decisions that we've made. And as a listener of the Predictable Profits podcast, if there's one thing that we're not embarrassed to talk about when we have mud in our faces. We're happy to share our learning and our experiences and all that other fun stuff all along the way, because we're in the trenches with you. And we also have the benefit of not only working with many, many different companies, we're also business owners ourselves and multiple different businesses.
Charlie, how important is it to touch upon, if somebody's thinking about, well, where the bloody hell do I start? For me, I would personally push people towards the super consumer. Do you understand that part of your business first?
Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody what the super consumer
Mm.
actually is?
Sure. So, super consumer, the concept is based around the concept of an ICP, or an ideal client profile. But an ideal client profile is a profile that's built on somebody that we think marketing speaks to best for the result of the marketing campaign, or the result of what we're offering. And a super consumer is that, and then 10 times more, because a super consumer is somebody who often is a key referral and will bring multiple to other business. They are often a very high net promoter and will speak actively to people about you. That it goes one level, I think, above an ICP. You might say it a little bit more elegantly than that, Charlie, but it's really more powerful, and it's somebody that you could base your future revenue on and who you want in your business.
And because this is such a real important topic, and it's a key strategy to get you in the right direction, I hope I'm not being a glutton for punishment here, but here's what I'm going to suggest. Go on LinkedIn, send me a message, and just say, hey, I listened to the podcast and I'd like to get your super consumer resource. And then I'll have one of our assistants reach out to you and provide you with a super consumer resource. So if we're connected, it makes it easy. If we're not connected, just send me a connection request and say, hey, Charlie, I listened to the podcast. I'd love to get access to that super consumer. And then we'll go ahead and we'll make that happen. What else do we want to cover here that I'm missing?
I think that about wraps the idea of niching, Charlie, and the power. Again, if people want help with this or the concept to be talked about more, they're more than happy to reach out and we're happy to talk to them.
Awesome. Fantastic. So let's do a little kind of rundown, Joe, and I want to make sure that people fully understand everything that we're talking about here. So at the very beginning, we talked about these three circles, these three overlapping circles. So circle number one is going to be your industry. Give me an example of a good niche versus a bad niche when people think of niching, Joe.
Good niche versus a bad niche. Oh goodness, you're putting me on the spot now, Charlie.
Ask you a question. Is B2B a good niche or a bad niche?
No, nobody identifies with being a B2B. Yes, you are a B2B. I understand that, but nobody's soul identifies with problems around B2B. Like that's too high level. So B2B is an example of a bad niche. Unless you're something like cybersecurity, and even then you could argue that a niche is even more important, but unless you're just so general that your product, like the iPhone, is general enough that it doesn't matter, it doesn't need a niche. But otherwise, yeah, B2B is too big.
Well, technically, the iPhone niched when it was its infancy, right? What they wanted to do was hit like the artsy people that wanted to think different. Like they niched by a certain psychographic, so to speak. But it was a massive, massive niche. You wouldn't even argue that's a niche. It's just a segment of a mass market. What about let's take a chiropractor for example? Would you say that a good niche for a chiropractor would be anybody who's experiencing pain, good or bad?
Oh, for sure not. No,
No.
no, no, no. I think, yeah, a good example of something that could be refined. And again, you're just going to get better solutions and better marketing.
So a chiropractor who says neck pain, good one or bad one?
Good one.
Yeah, good one. Right. So the more specific you get, the better it's going to end up being. So I want you to think about that. Are you being too generic or are you being too specific? So the first circle is all about that market, like making sure you have that market. As Joe mentioned earlier, hit the super consumer, figure out who's giving you the most amount of money, your highest lifetime customer value, your biggest advocates, your biggest fans, most leads that just happen to come to you. Like that becomes your super consumer. The next part of the concentric circle is going to end up being your problem and the problem that you solve, right? You want to solve no more than three. The way that we like to do it is we like to frame it in the form of questions so that your target market, your super consumer, when they hear those three questions, 80% of them are going to say, oh, wow, all three of them actually apply to me. So if you're listening and you happen to be an agency and these three questions appeal to you, chances are we should talk. So question number one is or the way that we would phrase it is, if you're coming to predictable profits, typically CEOs such as yourself are coming to us asking one of three questions. They're saying, how does my business grow faster? Or they might be saying, some months are feast, some months are famine. How do we bring more predictability into the revenue? Or the third one is, look, the company's too dependent on me. How do we scale? 80% of our super consumers go, oh, all three of those apply to me. So how's that problem? And then the third one is your process, that unique process that you own that nobody else has. And that process, what is going to be yours? So you have all that dialed in. The center of those three circles is power, 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 power. So you're going to get that explosive growth at the lowest cost per lead and the highest conversion rate. That, my friends, gets you one step closer to, dare I say, predictable profits. On that note, that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. If you have more questions or looking for information, feel free to visit us over at predictableprofits.com as we help answer the questions for how do you grow faster, more predictably, and less dependent on you. Got a whole bunch of resources there. Feel free to consume. And an opportunity to grab a copy of my book, The Predictable Profits Playbook, for free. You can see how to do that over at predictableprofits.com. So, this is Charles Gaudet with my friend, my colleague, my chief of staff, Joe Beecroft. I will see you in another episode.